We are at the final item on our agenda today, which is a QualiWare Tool tip from Dragos in our customer success team. And Dragos is going to take us through what things look like from an end user's point of view in governance workflow. So, Dragos, I'm going to hand things over to you.
Thanks, Cecile. So yeah, it's a good coincidence that James brought up governance workflows on the web, because the subject that I'll be talking about today is using governance workflows from an end user perspective on the web. So while documentation and training exists out there around setting up governance workflows in QualiWare, one area that users have pointed out that needs more exploration is in the actual use of those workflows from an end user perspective, start to finish. So we know how to set them up, but we don't know.
Can we see a screen here?
Yes, I'll be sharing my screen shortly.
Okay.
I just have to have this beginning blurb that I'm getting through. So what do governance workflows do? Well, at a sort of in a general context, they allow organizations to use repeatable business processes to orchestrate how data is entered, validated, and how respective changes are approved. So this results in high quality data, policy compliance, user collaboration, and of course, change awareness across the organization. In other words, it's a controlled development lifecycle of sorts for various types of items in your organization. And in the context of QualiWare, the purpose of a governance workflow, of which, by the way, there are about 20 or so predefined out-of-the-box workflows that you can, you work straight away with. So the purpose of the governance workflow is to enable tailored governance solutions for different types of objects in your repository. It contains and allows you to model a combination of governance roles and governance states. The governance states are placed inside a governance role so that only whoever is acting under that role can action on the states. And those governance states are connected by governance transitions, which in turn also have governance action methods appended to them. So those are things that allow you to, maybe automatically fill in a certain attribute or send out a notification email. And there's also a few other things like governance event messages and conditional action methods and all that. So with that in mind, today I'm going to take you to our compliance management accelerator repository, which we're in the process of building. And as a disclaimer, everything here is a work in progress. One second. Whoops, am I sharing the right screen here?
I have a blue screen.
There we go.
Now we have a QualiWare screen. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to take you through our, in progress compliance management accelerator repository. And I will first show you what some of the out-of-the-box workflows look like. And, we'll go over some of the high-level functionality, and we'll have just to get a general sense of how they're supposed to work. And then for the rest of the demo, with help from Kirill, I'm going to walk you through one of our custom governance workflows that we've set up for corrective action objects in the repository, from its inception to the retirement of that corrective action. So here we have sort of the set of standard out-of-the-box governance workflows. Some of these are very familiar to you. So there's workflows for handling documents, for handling process diagrams, resources and assets. Here's the one for that most of you might be familiar with, the change management workflow. This is for instance, business process networks and workflow diagrams. We have 4 distinct roles which have access to different stages within the governance workflow. And we can see the roles, we can see the governance states, and these little arrows that are connecting them are called governance transitions. So the thick green arrows are sort of the default path that the default governance path that it would take. The first option that pops up when you're in development status is to move it to finished. And as alternate paths, you could also go into the expand the options and have access to the circulation and or move it straight to ready for approval, or finished. Let's go over another example. Here we have a complaint management workflow that has two roles: the originator, the individual who created the complaint item. That might be different from the customer that had a complaint. But the originator, gets to create the complaint object and assign a responsible and move it between two statuses. So we could either go to announcement or handling. In either path, when you move, when you change your governance state to one in a different role, now you no longer have access. So if I move from registration to handling, what happens is the governance state changes to handling, and the individual, the originator who's marked as responsible, would be getting a notification message. So this is what this little icon represents. By the same token, when the responsible is brings the object to finish state and they want to close it or retire it, there's a message that gets sent out. And so these are all part of governance action methods. You can set up little message templates or little functionality, like here the closed by date would be set automatically, and the closed date and the who closed it would be defined automatically when the object is moved from finish to close. Let's look at another one. So here's an out-of-the-box corrective action management workflow. And for the purposes, so there's two in here. Sometimes in some of those workflow diagrams, we might see multiple responsible roles. This happens when it leaves you the option, if the individual responsible for handling may not necessarily be the individual responsible for implementing it. So that's why that's why these may be distinct. But for the purposes of our compliance management Accelerator repository, this corrective action management workflow wasn't sufficient for us. So we went ahead and created our own governance workflow for corrective action management. Capability-wise, it doesn't do anything more or less than any of the other workflows. It's just set up with custom steps that ensure compliance to the ISO 9000 standard. And this is the way that we've chosen to be compliant, because it's straightforward and it's transparent. Other people, other organizations, they may take different approaches. They may use the out-of-the-box workflow and then append all kinds of documentation that's related to ISO standard requirements. But we've chosen to make a custom governance workflow. And by taking you through this workflow, which I will shortly, you get a sense of how to do it from start to finish, and hopefully gain a high-level understanding of how to use workflows from an end-user perspective. So I'm going to create a corrective action, and with the help of Kirill, I'm going to walk you through from start to finish through this workflow, and we'll see how it how it gets done. So I'm going to hop over to non-conformance. Typically, corrective actions are born out of non-conformances. So there is a create corrective action button here. So I'm going to press that. And here in this creation dialog, I have a few mandatory fields like the title and the responsible. I'm going to assign Kirill as a responsible because we'll be going back and forth to the governance workflow together. Whoops. And of course, I can fill out some details. I can attach some external file attachments or some external links in the associated documents. Typically, the non-conformance that you create a corrective action out of is automatically populated here. And you can also associate your corrective action to perhaps some goals that are relevant to it. So now that I've created it, I'm going to save and go back into my non-conformance. And in the corrective actions to non-conformance tab, I can see the one I just created here. So I'm going to navigate to it. And here I can take actions on it. So currently, I can see what stage, if I'm relevant to this workflow, if I'm part of this workflow as somebody who created it, or I was marked as the accountable or responsible, then I'll have access to some of the functionality in this workflow, and including these buttons. So what is that ready for CA plan response button? Well, that allows me to move from the CA assigned, which is the default sort of state, to the respond with corrective action plan. So now, as the originator, I can assign a responsible, which also is interchangeable with owner. And once I move it to this status, now the responsible, in this case Kirill, will have to respond with a corrective action plan. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say ready for CA plan response. Again, that's going to move us from CA assigned to respond with corrective action. And as you can see, the governance sort of workflow diagram button and any functionality related to the governance state is now invisible to me because now whatever other action that has to be taken on that corrective action falls within Kirill's role. So we'll go back over to the corrective action management workflow diagram so that you can see now Kirill has to submit a corrective action plan and press a button in the same place that I did to move it from CA assigned to respond with corrective action. So now I've moved it to Kirill, and I'm going to pass the screen on to Kirill.
Thanks, Cecil. All right, so now you can see my screen. I have actually received an email from Dragos saying that I'm right now responsible for a corrective action. So the content of this particular email can be customized depending on your business needs. In this case, you can see the hyperlink, which brings me right to the corrective action that Dragos created. So in 15 seconds, we should see that. All right, so now we see the corrective action that was created by Dragos. Couple of things. On the right side, you can actually see an exclamation mark, which is going to explain the governance workflow status it is in right now. So you see the status have changed from CA assigned to respond with corrective action, which I'm responsible for, so I need to take care of it. Now, at this point, I have only one action available. The action is CA plan ready for approval. Once I press that, the governance history should be updated, and Dragos will receive an email saying that I've done some work on the corrective action. So I've done that. If you go to the governance history here, you will actually see 3 entries. The first one is Dragos actually assigned the CA. Then he also responded, he sent me the corrective action into my hands, into my responsibility, and I basically approved a CA plan. So now the ball is back at Dragos's responsibility to decide whether he approves or denies this CA plan.
Now, I'm not going to show you this part, but I will just say that I'm going into the same place that I went to change status, and there's a drop-down menu, and I'm going to just reject his CA plan for now. So now it's rejected, and Kirill can refresh the page. So you notice before he didn't have access to the governance functionality, and once he refreshes, he will, because now again the task is in his role.
So you actually get an email whenever you get rejected or the information gets approved. You can see here there is the information on a denial. Then again, I would press a hyperlink, or I could use the same one and refresh it in the browser. And I will click on the governance status again, and you see it's back to the second status. You can also see the governance history to identify, well, it wasn't actually a bug, but Dragos actually denied me the corrective action. So he said something is not working out, so please, prepare the plan ready for approval again. And we're going to do it one more time. And hopefully
Okay.
this time the process will go through entire chain of governance stages.
So Cecile, if you mind switching the screen back to me.
Sure. I hope you'll be nicer to Kirill this time and approve it.
All right. So as you guys can see, I've received an email saying that the corrective action plan is now ready for approval. So I'm going to navigate back to my QualiWare window. And so as you can see here, now we're in the approval stage. I either have to approve or reject it again. Rejecting it, of course, will bring us back to respond to with corrective action. But this time, Kirill's done some satisfactory work, and so I'm going to validate that. And now it's back in his so now we're going to look at the governance history. I've moved it from approval of CA plan to implement CA. So that this is a governance state that is in his role. Therefore, again, I don't have access to the governance workflow or any governance actions until he finishes his task.
Yeah, and I got an email, and it actually saying that the corrective action has been approved this time. And then when I go to the corrective action in the web, now I have an option to move it to ready for verification. And I will press that, and that should update the history of the governance of this particular object. Back to you, Dragos.
So now I'm just going to refresh my page. I get an email as well, and I can click on the link in an email, but I'm just going to refresh my page for now. So now that Kirill has submitted his CA implementation, it's my responsibility to do a couple of validations. First, I have to verify that the implementation itself has been done adequately and to our standards, and then I have to verify whether that implementation is effective. So for all intents and purposes, I'm just going to validate the implementation, and also, so now you see we've moved from here till here. And here I have the option of either rejecting the effectiveness of the corrective action implementation, in which case we'd go all the way back to Kirill having to resubmit his corrective action plan. But I'm not that mean, so I'm just gonna hit CA is effective and closed. And as we can see here, we have the entire list of governance status changes from the point of assignment to the point it was closed. We can see where it says respond with corrective action plan again that I've also rejected, and then we've gone through and repeated some of those governance stages. And that's it. That's that's all I have for you guys. In conclusion, there is a lot of documentation and how-tos on how to set up the governance workflows, but not a lot on what it looks like from the perspective of the parties who are actually using the workflows. So we wanted to show you that, and on top of providing some sort of basic or high-level understanding of the mechanics of governance workflows. And we'll also be making a video for this, and it'll be posted on our YouTube a bit later. Are there any questions?
I don't want to use emails. Do I have a list somewhere of things that are outstanding that I have to do?
There is, but I'm not sure that we have it set up yet. So in compliance, you would have it in my corrective actions list, for instance. Any corrective action that pertains to you or that you've been involved in at some point. The reason that you see all of these, even though I made my name may not currently be appended to them, is because I was involved in creating, or I was responsible or accountable for all of these at some stage.
Now you can also have a different tile which would be called to do, and you would actually have entire available, different objects to which you need to do some sort of actions. Not necessarily my corrective actions, but entire list of QualiWare objects which you might need to approve, deny, or comment, provide the feedback. And then the other thing is, whenever you see the governance history, you could also don't just deny the information or approve it. You can also provide some comments and feedback, and that will be a part of the history as well, which is very useful.
So we could add a comment here as we're developing the object as well.
Thank you very much, guys.